Well, welcome everyone. It's now 3 o'clock and we'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if more people would join us today on this sustainability and education roundtable with a great cast of Danish researchers, teachers and stakeholders. So the session will be recorded and transcribed and afterwards shared on our MIUS webpage, because this is part of the EU-funded project MIUS, and I'll give a short introduction to that as well. I'll just first of all, I'll just do a little introduction to first of all, thank you very much for participating here, and I'd like to introduce Tia. Could you just make yourself seen? Yeah, Tia, could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone and welcome from my behalf too. I'm Tia Jaakkola and I'm working as a project assistant in this MIUS project.
Thank you very much, Tia.
And also co-facilitating here.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'm Christel Arnevik. I'm the head of fashion at Design School Kolding and also the lead of the MIUS project. And the MIUS project is a 3-year EU-funded project where we, together with, let me just share, because I did actually make a little thing I could share here. So I'll just, so you see it in writing. So this is a collaboration between the Kolding School of Design, Willem de Koningen in the Netherlands, and the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. We've been working together for, well, 2.5 years, and we have been making a little library, and this is the website we have made as well, where you can see about us, and you can see about the development we have done within the curriculum, each curriculum. And the offset has been, how can we use digital tools, or can we use digital tools for a green transition, inclusion, diversity in fashion education? The roundtable here is part of this project, and the overall idea with this is to we each who are participating in the panel, we are super immersed in trying to work with sustainability, or not trying, but working with sustainability in education on various levels. So it's primary schools or formal education, informal, higher education, and so on. So we all teach sustainability within the 4 pillars of sustainability, which covers the environmental, economic, social, and cultural. And we don't touch on all of them, but some of us are within more than one. So the overall idea was to gather Danish researchers, educators, to talk about or to showcase what we do already, but also, since we are working within the field, we might see what could be a possible next step, or how also we can go beyond just the little area we work within ourselves. So this is the overall idea. And I would like to also say that in this great landscape we have here of people, I also had invited educators from both Kia and Copenhagen and from the Royal Danish Academy, but due to busy schedules, they could unfortunately not participate. Also from the user association group TINK, unfortunately, Vibeke Riisberg could not participate after all, but we are very happy for the ones who could participate, and it's going to be talking about what we do and also possibly what we can do, or what at least might be really good for others to do. So I'll just do a quick introduction so you know who's in this panel. So when I mention your name, perhaps you can just say yes, and then we'll go back to a further introduction. But for now, it's just a quick introduction so everybody knows the faces of who it is. So Vibeke Riisberg. Yeah. Ulla Ræbild. Marie Louise Rosholm, Jette Lindgaard, Anne Louise Bang, Rikke Rovald, Anders Andersen, og Alma Storm. Good, thank you very much. Yes, so I've had the privilege to talk to each of you before this, so I know a little bit about what you all do, but please help me out if there's anything I'm missing, but I'll do my best at facilitating, and you will help me if there's something you need to say. But first and foremost, I would like Vibeke Riisberg, could you please introduce yourself and also just briefly the area you are covering in this I mean, you have a huge array of topics you could talk about, but from what topic you are focusing on today?
Yes, I have a background in textile design, so I come from practice. And I had my own company for 20 years, so I know both the art part and the industrial part. And I hold a PhD in the evolution from analog to digital printing. So one could say I was quite early out in using digital tools, and some of the discussions that we did way back and was in the institutions are kind of maybe repeating a little bit again, but still interesting. And I retired as associate professor in 2021 after many, many years at Design School Kolding. And now I'm affiliated as Emerita at the same school. I've taught sustainability to textile and fashion students since 1992. The first course was started at the Copenhagen School, and a few years later in Kolding. Yeah, what else? I've been teaching both BA and MA and supervising PhDs, both in sustainability, and I would say I'm always trying to keep the focus on various aspects of sustainability. And currently I'm working on a book with Timo Rissanen and Linda Gross, and it's focus on sustainable business models and product service systems in fashion. So what have been my interest over the last few years in particular has been to develop together with these two colleagues and others, also students, in fact, a little bit, how to design garment that could have less use of raw materials. So that's kind of my focus at the moment. But I have been in a lot of different and various projects. So I would say my focus today, you have given me a frame, Christel, was on possible green transition levers and inclusion and diversity. And I guess I'll get back to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely for now. It's just really, thank you very much, the introduction, and you do have such a huge back catalogue, but thank you very much. I would like Ulla Ræbild, could you also do a little introduction from yourself before we dive a bit more into the actual discussion?
Yes, of course. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you, Christel. Yeah, I'm associate professor in the Lab for Sustainability and Design at the Design School Kolding. And that is an interdisciplinary research and development group, you can say, but we are also strong in fashion and textile within that group. I have a background, I'm an educated fashion designer, but has worked in education most of my life, and also as head of fashion. So you can say my main priority is to develop, you can say, ways to educate and form livelihoods for our students that they can align with their own personal beliefs and values, because there's been like a a friction along the way. And that has also led me to develop the Design for Planet MA course we have at the school in 2018. So that being the bigger frame, I did my PhD in fashion methodology, fashion design methodology, and you can say that new ways of working with new methodologies and tools is an outcome of this interest in the new roles and how fashion designers can engage, and fashion and clothing designers can engage in society in a broader way, you can say, within both private, public, and civic society. So a broader possibility to bring value and for more types of people and settings. So that's also what I would like to discuss today.
Thank you very much. Marie-Louise Rosholm, could you please also introduce yourself and your focus area for this very roundtable?
Yeah. So I have been, I'm from, even though I was a hand weaver at the beginning, apprenticed to a hand weaving, and I went to the craft school in Kolding when it was only craft and you couldn't study design in Denmark by then. But I have been working in the industry for 40 years with my own company, with my own design studio. And my focus is about how do we design for the start? How do we design everything for a start so it can remain as a pure product the whole way through and never become a waste? So it's a way of designing which we have not focused on, and I think it's very important. It's fine to do design for waste, make design out of waste, but the problem is that if we continue to do that, or if we don't design for the start, then we will not. Then we will always have the waste. So, and I have learned the industry, worked to industry in Italy, and I have worked for with the world's biggest fiber producer in Austria, Lenzing. So I have been thrown into the industrial way of thinking in sustainability all from the start, and I think that is, of course, also a part of how to design for inclusivity.
Thank you very much. And I'm just thinking that there's some things that we touch upon from the same angle, perhaps some of us, and some will see other ways. But I was just thinking now when you were talking about the design for start and how to keep the design in line, it sounds a little bit to like also what you, Vibeke, were talking about when with the project where it's transforming a shirt and keeping it, I mean, I know it was a shirt, but keeping it alive, but is that sort of out of the same according to your, how you see it, Vibeke, and the work you did together with Timo Rissanen?
Yes, very much, but also to a project I did way back in the 90s on how to design from monomaterials and other things like that. So I think that's definitely in line with what Marie-Louise is into.
And I know from our conversation the other day, Vibeke, that you talked very much about how we have to put an emphasis on aesthetics as well in education, because I mean, now it's my words, but there's so many things we have to consider in education all the time, with the both having the craftsmanship and also being academically founded, but also digital tools and so on. So it could be a lot of things to constantly juggle, you could say. But you were mentioning something about making sure we have focus on the aesthetics. Could you elaborate a little bit on that in regards to sustainability as well? And
since I'm not so often at the school and see the students' work, it just struck me that that some of what we were discussing at the beginning of when introducing digital tools way back, I think it was in the 80s, and Louise know also that in Weaving First, there was a lot of resistance to digital tools, and we were often, criticized for the aesthetic that this would kind of, the outcome of it. And a lot of it was due to technology itself that was underdeveloped. So today we have a technology that's very much more sophisticated and developed. And still, I think that it is important to try to see the digital and the physical is not the same. And personally, I have followed this for I don't know how many years now, where it had been said now it's almost the same as the analog and so on. But I think we should rather see it as, of course, they are linked, but there are things you can do analog and there are other things you can do digitally, and they can overlap. But you can also try to work on what kind of aesthetics that's radically different maybe, or could appeal to different groups of people or whatever. But I understand the aesthetic very much as a sensorial experience. So it's based on our perception as humans, and it's not to confuse with taste. So just to make sure that we're not talking about taste. And I think that sometimes when you are in a new area with new technologies, you tend to, of course, put a lot of energy into the students to learn the tools, because it's rather complex, and today much more complex than it was long ago. But it's just not to forget these discussions that are sometimes difficult, because also over the years, many teachers, myself inclusive, are fearing maybe to discuss aesthetics. And I think that we need not be afraid, but be courageous, and to also read some of the theories, maybe perception theory, and some of all the good stuff that has already been done in design and about design and aesthetics, that was also done at DSKD when Anne-Louise was there and we worked together. And many others of the colleagues in research and tutors have developed actually tools and methods and texts that can be implemented and further developed.
I think I would like to thank you very much, Vibeke. I would like to also, could you, Marie-Louise, elaborate a little bit, because you touched on the aesthetics, and it's just like, it's not like anybody wants to not touch on the aesthetic, but you as well really pointed it out. So from a sustainability point of view.
I think it's the aesthetics, and in my opinion, we have lost at least 10, if not more, years in, for example, in fashion. Not now, up to now, but before, because we didn't want to approach sustainability and aesthetics, and sustainability had to also be a political message, and therefore it was difficult to get started on it. But I think that one of the things, the biggest hurdles, are the emotional longevity. And the emotional longevity is very, very connected to aesthetics, and that is why we have to make the best and the most beautiful designs that we have ever done. When I'm thinking about keeping things in use, it's also keeping the shirt in use for many years and in different ways. But my main concern is that we have to look at whatever it is as a raw material. So every time we, for example, take one shirt and put it together with another, because that could be funny and we could give it another life, then we have to consider what are we doing with it. What are we putting it together with? What is the sewing thread? There's so many things that are that we have to, so many answers that we have to questions that we have to answer, but it's only becomes more interesting. It's a challenge, but it's one of the good ones. And I think that we cannot, when we make things, if we make things which are interesting because of the story, then when the story disappears, then the thing is not the object is not interesting any longer. So that is why the object has to. It's essential that it lives on its own, because otherwise you need the story, and stories they get lost or they develop or something else. So when we make products, they must be something that people want to have for the sake of the product.
That sounds like an easy task, Marie-Louise.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's go on. Let's get started.
But Ulla, perhaps you too. I mean, we didn't talk about necessarily aesthetics, but you talk very much about the designers' new roles and so on, and especially within sustainability from your chair as well. But what do you think also is sort of now is what do we need to add or do or teach for these new roles to emerge? What are the focus?
Well, I think to make a bridge that the aesthetics are essential, no matter what role you're in, because that's also how we contribute. But of course, very context dependent and audience dependent as well. And I think being around design for so many years, I've never heard any designer saying they would like to not make beautiful, fantastic, long-lasting products, but there are just a lot of stuff around it that push the prices down, and they're not allowed to do these things. So I think the issue is not necessarily with the designers, and that's when I get to the point of how can we make possibilities for designers to work in different ways and maybe make careers out of a portfolio of different type of roles so that they can actually still develop the good design and continue to explore what that is and what role the aesthetics should have in the world and the sensorial, and at the same time maybe also facilitate stuff, teach stuff, research stuff, have incomes from various you can say tracks, because it offers the possibility to keep being critical and investigative and curious, and actually have, you can say, some power over your own career. And we know that all designers are very precarious existences, and especially in fashion. And there's a lot of, you can say, insecurities. Lots of people leave the fashion industry very early on. It's difficult in many ways. So for me, the aesthetic exploration and the role of aesthetic, if that can be somehow also unhooked from the traditional industry and be shown to society how it can work in different ways, and we as education can help explore that within curricula and within research and development projects, just as this one, Crystal, the MIOs. So I think we have to work very hard as educators to also uncover the different paths and be able to help imagine them and make them come into being somehow, because it can, it's just, there has to be more opportunities than being, an employee in a fast fashion company. And we are, of course, interested in offering up new ways of living and practicing and using fashion design or garments overall in society. So I don't know if that answered your question. But...
No, but I mean, the thing is, there is no sort of firm answer needs to come to. It's really just, it's just the...
But to come back to the aesthetics, I mean, we see it every single day here, and you probably do as well, all of you, with the projects the students take on, that in so many ways align with the research projects we are doing. We're just trying to find out things, and no matter what type of resource or what type of context, what we offer at the design schools is that we can actually materialize these imaginations and try them out, and should it be this and should it be it, and we can go out, and that's the entire new thing that we now also teach students to go out and find out how is this received with the people that should use it, or invite them in, and that was not seen only a few years ago. So that's an entirely new turn, I think, for the fashion education, to actually look beyond your own, you know, vision as creator, or so the relevance overall.
I think the look beyond your own will be a really good key to move to Jette Lindgaard, because some of the things we talked about in the conversation. Hi Jette, you perhaps also can just tell briefly your role and your job and why you're here.
Yeah, I'm not a teacher. I work for the Danish fashion and textile industry in the organization where we give advice to member companies, to brands, regarding, I'm working with environmental stuff and sustainability, and also with education. So I'm responsible for the team taking care of the education. I don't know what it's called, garment craftsman, beklædningshåndværker, and during this work, we also look a lot into how are we going to prepare the young people coming out from this education to participate in what's going on in the industry, and how can they be part of changing what we're doing today into a more sustainable way of doing fashion.
And one of the things we talked about in our conversation the other day was also the ability to not just not know only what you were doing, but to work sort of work together and know the
we talked about we have a lot when we talk about manufacturing of textiles, of fashion, and that they will go and learn from each other and maybe have cross-functional work together, so they can see what I'm doing here, how will this influence on the next one who I deliver this information for, and how can they use it when they have to work on this further on.
Yeah, so it's very much about knowing not just your own little field.
Yeah,
but
you're not in a little block yourself. You have to understand and see what's going on in the rest of the processes.
And one of the things we also touched upon, and where you said you had to stay curious and keep learning.
Stay curious and learn for the rest of your life. But because doing being a young people taking some education and thinking that that's it, but that's not it. That's just the basic. So be curious, be willing to learn and put new things on.
Well, thank you much, Jette. Thank you very much, Jette. And now we sort of touched a bit about the continued learning from Jette, but also very much the higher education and so on. And we have with us also Anne-Louise Bang, who also is in higher education, but also has very much ventured into other areas where it's also needed with some sustainability. Anne-Louise, could you please introduce yourself and your focus area here?
Yes, and like Vibeke, I have not that much experience, but I now have a lot of experience. So I am a senior associate professor at VIA University College, where I work with design and sustainability in the Center for Textiles Design and Circularity. And it means that I have access to material engineers and scientists, but also experts in consumption and user behavior. So we put an emphasis on working cross-disciplinary across these three fields, where design is the third one. In education at VIA, I'm occupied with material-driven design for apparel and textiles, and how to combine it with design thinking so that we can keep the craft in focus. So because we have a unique and very important opportunity to also promote the materials and the way they influence our world. So it's a lot in line with what you guys said. But today I'm here because the last couple of years I have been very interested in figuring out how do we communicate all this to the teenagers and young adults that we of course would like to become our students, but also the generation that will take over in a not so far future. So in a couple of months, I will start a project funded by the Independent Research Foundation, where we will work with 250 high school students across the country, asking them, but also experimenting with them to figure out what is it that turns an ordinary garment into a favorite garment, and how does that influence longevity. We know a lot about longevity, but we don't know that much about what is it that makes garments favorite garments. At least we could learn more. I also work with the board games for high school students. It's because I have participated in, I don't know what the English word is, but in Danish it's called forskningsdøgn. And here you can actually get funding to produce something. So I have 2 board games now, one on materials and textiles, and one on circularity and sustainability in connection to textiles. And I play these board games with high school students and everybody else who wants to play, also our beklædningshåndværkere at VIA. The thing we do is that we play teams against each other, but also together. So all together, the purpose of the game is to lower the temperature of the world, and you do that by answering questions. And it's actually a very, very funny way to engage the young ones. And last week I played with a group of high school students from Silkeborg, and I asked them, "Oh, well, what do you think about my brand new game?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, but you know, this sustainability, it's not really our main interest. But playing a game, then it's okay. That's very much for us. Then we can see that." But it was so funny because they were actually very good at playing this game, and they knew a lot. So yeah. Very long, briefly.
Yeah, no, but it's really good. It's really good. Then I'll just to bring that on now to Vibeke Riisberg. You two work with young people. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you work within and your focus in this roundtable?
Yes, sure. Just quickly, I also have a background in craft, fashion design in a crafty way in Denmark, and then I've been studying in London at St. Martin's, like Anders, who's coming on later. And then I've worked in Paris for many years. So I've been in the high fashion, then I was in the kind of medium fashion in Denmark for some years, where I realized how bad the business had become during the noughties and the tents there. So I kind of quit the whole thing, and I learned about the legislations that was helping me to understand the ways to approach it, where I would have some support in my back. And that's why now? As you say, Christel, I'm teaching actually young people. I teach children and I teach a lot of teenagers, the age you're talking about. You just spoke about with the board game, you know, the 16-year-olds up to like maybe 25-year-olds in fashion school. So I have this really broad kind of touch base, but especially those 16-year-olds. I think they kind of, how can I say, it worries me with the level of craft they come with. They're very 2D. They don't know how to hold a pair of scissors. They don't know how to, they can't handwrite. And I think it's been, especially the last year, which they would be born in what, 7? Something has happened. And I think when we start looking at when they were educated, it was when the new reformation in the school started, where the teachers have been educated a lot less than they used to be. So I think we're beginning to see what happens to the savoir, what you say, the craft that they have with their hands. And I think not just as fashion people or students or whatever they're becoming one day is worrisome. It's also as consumers, because everybody will have more or less what they come with when they're 16 years old. They have no idea what is polyester, what is wool, what is cotton, something that my granddad would know, even though he was a man who didn't have any, who was a doctor or whatever. Do you know, I think there's something we've lost so badly, and I'm just worried about it in a kind of more, in a bigger scale as consumers, and that we're almost like textile illiterates. And this is, so then I'm just trying to, with this, EU legislation that I've got like under control, what's going to happen when. Then I'm also doing some research on textiles, and there's so much waste, the post-consumer, mechanical recycle, or biopolyester like solutions. So I'm also doing some research with EU funding whilst I'm teaching even kids. And I realize when you have kids, I have 10-year-olds as well, then it's a lot easier to teach them something, because they're not becoming these 2D people yet. Then you can actually start getting the craft in. But I think, as I know Alma is going to talk about this later as well, we need to start with fibers and maybe wool carding or weaving or something at a very, very early stage, so that they will regain this. I think I said enough there. And I think the social, right now people are the kids are not very healthy right now. There's a lot of mistrivsel, suddenly the word doesn't come to my mind, but that the kids are not they have all their worries, and I think being good at a craft, or being able to focus on a craft for a long time, will take you away from the screen, and you will spend some time, and afterwards you will have this feeling of happiness, and I guess it's called craft psychology. And this, I think, is also would just be a benefit of regaining the textile knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking very much now also about the making and the doing, the knowing the textile and so on. So I'm thinking, Anders, I'll lead to you, because I know that's also what you're teaching within the education. Could you elaborate a little bit on you and what you do and which group you are teaching?
Sure. Well, like Rikke, we actually know each other from London. I also went to St. Martin's, and I also have a fairly long history in the fashion business, both sort of high-end and commercial, in Denmark. And I'm currently teaching at University College Denmark in the sort of textile crafts and communication department. And you could say what I'm really interested in is promoting and developing practical methods to try and solve sustainability. So what I'm looking into, and also because we're sort of very old established craft education, I'm looking into how do you physically use your hands to be sustainable. So that's what we're working on at the moment. It's really interesting. At the moment, we're looking at everything we're doing and putting the sustainable lens on it, and sort of actually trying to create a sustainable craft environment where we talk about, if I'm going to make this shirt, that we want to have emotional longevity. You know what I mean? It's wonderful. A lot of things we're working with, both what Vibeke was saying and also Marie-Louise. We're in a think tank together, Marie-Louise and I, that she started about practical methods. We're trying to find practical solution for it. If you pick up a piece of cloth, if you pick up some thread, if you pick up something, how do we actually do it in a way that is more sustainable? And hopefully people can come and ask us how you do it. I think there's a need, if you go into what the need is at the moment, I think there's a need for where do you go as a company? Everybody knows it within fashion, I think, maybe not everybody, but most people certainly in Europe knows that we need to change tack. We can't work the way we have been doing. But how do you actually do it? From a very practical, down-to-earth level with materials. So that's what we're trying to look into at the moment.
Yeah, and that is the big question: how to possibly, heighten the green transition, and seeing what can we do and still within an industry where there's never no time for rest or contemplating things. So the agents of change have to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but already I think lots of things have been said. Well, emotional longevity has been mentioned several times, but also this thing about aesthetics and I don't know, maybe we're in a place where the aesthetics also play such a vital part, in the sense that the homemade aesthetic, the less beautiful perhaps, and the less perfect, might actually be preferable to the perfect. You know, I mean, it got me thinking about how sort of like sustainability is a driver of aesthetics in of itself, and I hope that we've moved from what Vibeke told. Great, fantastic, Vibeke, you've been on this for many more years than I have. I've only been doing it for 10 now or something like that. But hopefully, maybe we've come to a place through your work, for example, and everyone else who's worked with this for years, that we're accepting a different aesthetic and maybe even preferring it.
Thank you. Thank you, Anders. And I can see some hands are coming up, but I would like to just also bridge to Elma, who is the last of the panel that haven't said anything yet. And I was thinking now when Anders and I were talking about this change and so on, that I, of course, know you, Elma, as a student from our school. We graduated a couple of years ago. And then we met again when the Scandinavian Design Folk High School, as we call it in Denmark, they had a symposium in August of last year. And you were on fire. You had so much on your heart. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and this fire in you and what you're doing, how you're bringing it out to people?
Yeah. Hi. As I graduated from Kolding, I graduated as a textile designer. I early found out that I was not finding any spark in the industry and producing. I was like, why would I create something? Like, I found no purpose in creating more into a world that needs less. So the spark that I now realize that I have is to actually enlighten more people into what materials and the fashion industry is, like what the part of creating all what you guys been talking about, but into like try to push it into the very young years of the kids' education in the folk schools, to have a way more craft learning. So I've been starting out with my own little research and workshops, where I recently has been hosting a workshop in Middelfart at the library, where they have kulturskoleprøveordning, where they offer courses. And I had a course in sustainable fashion and material learning, where 10 girls, it was girls, which is also 10 girls came from the age 11 to 14 and had a whole opening world to the creating themselves, creating clothes for themselves, and during that we also had a great deal of good conversations about why and how and all that, why we use the materials we do. Yeah, so it's been very, very interesting, and I'm very happy to say that I will work further with this. I got into the master's program at the design school in Kolding, so I'll continue with these thoughts and work and research at the school.
Yeah, and you told me you developed your own little folder for the children to have, so they got the knowledge in more than one way. So both clever hands and clever heads at the same time.
Yeah, we had assignments as wardrobe studies, which I learned myself at the school, but I simplified it a lot more for the younger. Yeah, so stuff like that.
Sounds exciting. Thank you very much, Selma. So we had some hands coming up, and even though it's been in some minutes now, hopefully you remember yourself what made you raise your hand. So Marie-Louise, will you just did you have something you want to comment on?
Yes, thank you. I think it's all very interesting initiatives, but they're all grounded in as I hear it, all grounded in our world, and also in a quite a privileged part of this world. My concern and I'm really anxious about it, that the fact that we cannot save this world. Our part of the world, and I agree that we pollute the most, and and it's important for us to feel that we do something, and that's why we do what we do. But I think we have to think this in a global with a global aspect. So we cannot start making what Rikke talked about in the small classes, make them card wool and weave. There are big areas in the world where there are not resources for starting to do like that. And that's also a little bit my concern about the design schools, that we have to stand on the shoulders of what has already been developed, just like the furniture architects do, with no problems at all. I'm at the Trends and Tradition. They're all standing on someone's shoulders, and it's fine. And I think I'm really concerned about this very privileged, exclusive view on how to solve this problem, and not a massive global situation, which will have to be solved in with industrial measures, at least. That's it.
Thank you. Jette, you also have a hand up.
I was just thinking about the discussion we had, that we have, what we see is that we have a lack of knowledge about textiles, about methods to do textiles, about the manufacturings, because we sent all this knowledge out 30, 40 years ago. And as Marie-Louise just said, maybe we should be standing on the shoulders of what we knew, because there could be old methods that we have forgotten, old ways of doing textiles that we have forgotten because we don't have anybody in this country knowing about the processes, how to manufacture. So yeah, I think it's important that we will start digging into understanding textiles and understanding fibers again, instead of just leaving it to the manufacturers out there, because then it's what they say we take in and do like they say, instead of we have some knowledge taking out to them and educate them, because we have we have the power to do that. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. And Vibeke?
Yes, many interesting points of view. And I agree with Marie-Louise that we tend maybe to focus a lot on the Western societies, but I also think that it's important that we allow that at the same time as thinking in a more global context. And for what is going on at the design schools, in my opinion, there are so many different projects that kind of talking in general about what the design schools are is a risky thing, because it is so multifaceted today and the teaching is so different from what it was way back when you were educated. And I don't know, it's just that I have seen the changes because I've been in the school for so long, and I think that education has developed so much, and it's often not maybe communicated strongly enough to the outside society.
You're muted, Crystal.
You're muted, yeah.
Okay, that was so quiet, eh? I'll just say thank you, Vibeke, and I'll just put it on to Anne-Louise, and then I would like to have a little comment and steer you in a direction as well.
And I will unmute myself before I speak. Yes, I very much agree with both Marie-Louise and Vibeke, and I think this is it's very clear that there is work to do, and if things have changed at the design schools. I have been part of the design schools since year 2000 or something like that, and things have changed, but still need to change even more, because there are a lot of teachers my age and we were trained in the early 90s. So I think we need to continue the work we are doing, but of course in a global context. And it makes me think that it's highly important that we do what we do, because otherwise we would have no language to go out into the global community and discuss with them. I have been at many conferences now where there have been participants from indigenous people, and they are really sick and tired of being told what they should think about sustainability. And they say that that's people from New Zealand, it's people from the Sami people, and I can understand them. And at the same time, I'm like, well, yes, but you cannot just complain that it's irritating. Speak up with your own voice. We also want to hear your research. So in that respect, I think it's very important that we do what we do with the perspective of our own situation, because otherwise it will be word against word when we go out internationally. And then nothing will really change, because we will have a fight instead of a collaboration, and we are all living on the same planet, you know.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne-Louise. And I think, I mean, this discussion here really shows also the complexity of sustainability and how many ways we can go, and how many actions we can take, and that I fear we won't have the solution this afternoon, but it's really good to hear what everybody's doing and their takes on it. I can also see time is running, so I'm afraid I'm going to steer it a little bit back to what was talked about, how education is changing and how we need to keep up, and also have at least at the design school Kolding, also due to this, also through MeUS project, have added some new kind of crafts within digital solutions. So we've been doing virtual prototyping, we're doing body scan, and this is in order to work in a sustainable way, both when it comes to environmental but also social and possibly economic as well possibilities. But so if we talk about these digital of digital tools as the new, and we also have to do in order to, at least if we want to change, also possibly if we want to change the industry from within, then Jette Lindgaard, do you want to have a take on this, where you see it with your area? You teach, you don't teach yourself, but
no, I don't.
within the
Yeah, a
continuing
little bit
education.
during the webinars and seminars. Well, I think it's very important with digital tools, because otherwise it's very difficult to communicate, to prepare for manufacturing, and when you are going out in the world.
And from a sustainability point of view, or inclusion, diversity, is there anything specific you hear? Perhaps you hear something from your end, or the industry.
What's going on in our and due to the EU laws coming and etc. We need to know what we're doing out there. We need to have data of what we're doing, how we impact the world with doing these textiles we're doing. So we need to know exactly what we're doing out there, and that means data of how do I manufacturing this piece of fashion, and what does it mean? What impact does it have? And do I need to do it this way?
Yeah. And very importantly, if the data also can spill back into the, not just to the but to designers and salespeople and manufacturers,
back in organizations, so you can work with it and improve.
Yes, I was thinking, Rikke, have you got any comment on what do you think there with also digital tools? What you come from a much more craft tradition. You said you were talking about,
Yes. No, I think the digital tools are very important. But, as a teacher, if I speak about it as a teacher, as we all know, I'm 50 plus, it's hard for me to sit there and be the one teaching them how to use Clo 3D. I will never be the perfect teacher unless I take a fashion job again and I have to start doing it. So that I just show them it's there, and then they use it. I think Clo is a very good program also for including body shapes. It's for ordering just one piece or one size after a body scan. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think for understanding the supply chain and understanding for the digital product passport, I think it makes a lot of sense as well to be able to use blockchain. I think all this is extremely useful. I tell my students, but they have to go somewhere else to learn how to use it, because I think that's something they're a lot more ahead with that. When I speak to friends who are suppliers who work with producing things, they know a lot more about this, because it's a buyer's job for me, but I need to know it as a designer, because yes, the designer sits there with 80% of the responsibility. That's what everybody says. But I think the buyer's role, and I wish, well, you're there from VIA, aren't you? I think the buyer's role is very, very big in this, about the choices we make. And the buyers should also know a lot about textiles. And I'm not sure they do at this stage. They know a lot about economy. But I think for them to be able to make the right choice with the designer, of course, but then they have to give the power to the designer. It's always in the end the sales and the buyers. Then they need to, to know more for us to make the right choice together.
There's a good point about also what we talked about before. You can't sit in your own little compartment and just no. You need to really know. Everybody needs to have a good level of knowledge within materials as well, and
that's why it's a pity if it's like I'm just back to the record is on again, but if it starts too late, you don't know the basics, and it's just really hard if you have to sit there at a university to teach them what a fiber is. It could have been so much fun to do this when you're 6 years old. Yeah, and I think Elma, you agree. Most of people probably agree. It should be something within us and something that we know because it's a natural thing around us.
Yes, I think also, like we talked about, Alma, you had a clear comment to, at least with the focus on the group you're teaching with digital tools.
Yeah, for me, my thoughts of like using digital tools is difficult unless you have the craft, like the understanding of what you're doing with the digital tools. Unless if you don't have that beforehand, you'll have a connection. You'll have crafts and digital tools, and they won't work together. So there's a whole link that needs to be like really strong for it to make sense.
Yeah, so you are quite adamant that no digital tools before for your specific group till they had the clever hands to actually use their hands and make things themselves, right? So it will be in the way of them, something like that.
Yeah, connecting like otherwise it's something like otherwise you just create on the screen and send it to production and won't have any like then you receive back a product that needs editing, but that's you won't have a real understanding of the tradition behind what you do.
Mm. So it's very much, I hear from a lot of you, the sort of the embodied knowledge we have with both actually the textile and the shape for body, the clothes as well, that needs to be highlighted. Yes, Marie-Louise, you have a comment to that?
Yeah, yeah, I have. Well, it's first coming back to the schools. I attend a lot of design weeks, and there are always a lot of schools going exhibiting, which I always go to see them all because I find it the most interesting thing that is happening. I have found until the last couple of years, because I find that the students very much go for art projects often because it's easier to sort of get to have relationship to something that you can actually do on your own. Well, it was just another comment to. So I'm not basing. It's not my own education that is the base of what I mean, because I mean my education was so old, and I flew immediately. No, I didn't. I took the train immediately to Italy because I wanted to learn the industrial aspect of what I have learned. But what I wanted to see here is that I think that, or yes, and I know that everything is becoming very complex, and it is not possible for example, if a buyer have to find a good price and negotiate a good price and delivery and blah blah blah, they cannot also have the knowledge about the materials on a good enough or a high enough level to be able to negotiate and understand that. I think that working out of the silos, get rid of the silos, collaborate. That's the only thing that will. It's a tool that's very important because we know our knowledge is so big now that we cannot have it in our heads with so many different things, and that's why the collaboration is so important. And we also all know here, all present here, we know perfectly well when we collaborate, things comes out. 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 is much more than 2, because we thoughts take thoughts, and you end up in a different place. And that is why it's so important to get rid of the silos and collaborate in between the different professionalities that you have in a company or wherever on the earth you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. Collaboration is great. That is, I must say, something I myself really treasure highly, also with the Me You Ask, but also collaborations with the people who are here in this panel discussion from different institutions and being invited into other things. So let's keep collaborating. But till then, time is running. So I would also like to, so now we've talked about what we do and what we think should be done as well, but perhaps we should go a little bit back to what we can do, because all of you here who are participating seem to be very driven, and some of you are in education and some of you are driving yourself, but it's still within the ones within education seem to be a very self-driven things. And you, Anne-Louise Bank, you wrote in your reply to one of my questions that there's so much that can be done, but you cannot do anymore because you are so busy yourself and with education and making the games and research and so on. So, but if we were to talk about what we possibly could see out there that we could then get others to do or others to engage in, and there could be small things and it could be on a bigger scale from political. What would you like if you could suggest something?
That's a very good question. Yes, I wrote how, yeah, it would be easy to do something, but I'm fully occupied. That is
Yes.
what I wrote to Crystal. But anyway, ideas are price. You can always come up with ideas, and I think if what we can do is about awareness. Being aware of something also means that you can act on it, or you can invent an act, figuring out how to act. And I think around in this, what I have heard from the panel until now is a lot about acting. It's acting with the 6-year-olds, it's acting with the teenagers, it's acting with the industry, it's acting with the students in higher education. And we do that with the possibilities that we have and all that. But how do we really make a change is also political. So I guess that we need to call out to the politicians now, and we got a little lump sum this year. 40 million is not a lot of money in the state budget, but we are on the state budget now, and we are figuring out what to do with this money. And I think that is it's highly important that we act with this money so that we can get more, and we can get more political attention. Yeah. No, that was almost a prayer, but
yeah. But and one of the things you said as well was that we have a voice and we should shout out to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, just to finalize that was my whole reason to become a researcher. That when it all started, when Vibeke started in her research, I was like, okay, if we are going to do research in Denmark on textile and textile design, it should also be the people from the profession and the practice that are doing it, because we can add to the voices other professions have. So that is my whole. That is why I went into this. Otherwise, I would prefer weaving, but this is as good. So we need to use the voices we have, and it's highly important that we do it now. Yes.
Thank you very much, Anne-Louise. Ulla, you have a hand up.
Yeah, in terms of what we can do, I think we should be careful not to say it's either macro or micro actions. I believe really in the millions of micro actions in our own life worlds, and how we can teach everyone, and everything is going to spread also from good energy and engagement and collaboration. And at the same time, I also have to admit I'm at a point where I can see lots and lots of stuff can't be done through design alone. It has to be at a political level with some kind of regulation, because it's so much to do with consumption and prices and all kinds of things. So we cannot take on these things as designers. I say we're going to act globally. We can be aware of stuff, and we can but I think it's okay for everyone to explore through their life world. Of course, being mindful that you are privileged, but you have to understand things through the life you live and exemplify things through that. And in that way, of course, understand human and other beings through that, but you have to exemplify and understand through the concrete. And then I just also hearing you, Alma, we can see a very strong current in a lot of students that they wanna design, yes, but they also wanna give knowledge, understanding. There has to be some kind of level of relation where there is a dissemination of something or engagement with society, and so it's back to the kind of how can they be part of forming not only things but also kind of a societal engagement and give to other people. And it sounds very sort of holy, but it's very I think it's very joyful in a way that they open up in this way. And then the last thing I want to say, I think there's something around time. We talk about this longevity thing, but I think there are loads of issues around time also. I mean, I have students now that as an act of resistance say, I don't want to be busy. I don't want to ruin my own life being in here. We are also running around trying to be sustainable and, you know, all this being stressed and whatnot. So we also have to be really careful about the practices we impose or the mindset we have in our education on growth and speed and gearing and all these things that we carry with us into the sustainability agenda. Somehow we had a student in an internship. It was all about upcycling at a very high level, but it was so incredibly stressful for her to be there. So you can have a business model that ruins the people, or sustainable but ruins is unsustainable for the people there. So it has to be holistic, and we have to be careful of what we bring in ourselves. Yeah, that we are blind towards.
That's true. Thank you, Ulla. Vibeke?
Yes, I would like to be very concrete on a suggestion for what could be done. First of all, I will return to the me, you, us. I looked at some of the students' work and found very many interesting projects. And particular, I found the project with disabled people very, very inspiring in the way that they did the wardrobe studies with them, and you could really see how that generated and was taken into the design process. And you saw afterwards these people, getting something that they could never have bought in real life, and which had a function and which was a mirror of their needs and desires of how they wanted to look. And of course, I want to point to wardrobe studies as a method that can be used at all levels, from young people to old people to all kind of sections in society, because we all have a wardrobe, be small or big, and we can all learn from it. And most of all, the users learn so much when they participate in a wardrobe study. They become aware of their mistakes when they had 10 blouses they never use, and so on and so on. So my recommendation, which I also mentioned to Christel the other day, is that use wardrobe studies maybe even more. Let the students interview maybe the local politician, the local well-known CEO in Kolding, or and then spread out from there and go to the parliament politicians and so on, because that will make them aware, and it will probably also spark more debate in the public space. So that was a very concrete thing. The other small thing I would like to say is, like Ulla, importance of time for students to dig deep. So don't overload them with too much information in each course. Make time for developing and sensing, and then maybe have a less complex assignment, because it's so important that they dig deep.
Absolutely agree. Thank you very much, Vibeke. Rikke, and I'll just say that now we're going to do Rikke, and we're going to hear from Anders as well. And then I think it's time to say that for today, it's almost up, but there might also be some questions. So Rikke, will you please share your thoughts?
Yes. I have so many comments of how to solve it. I think there's not one solution. I think all the ones you came up with are very relevant, especially wardrobe studies. And I was thinking that could be an example of something that should be taken out of the schools and into TV, into social media, into influencers, instead of seeing Denmark's næste tøjdesigner, I quote, that was the name in the TV program, where you saw these, when you talk about time, you saw these poor young people just out of school having to design, be sustainable, do it all within a week, and being incredible craftspeople and being able to sell it to shops in Copenhagen or wherever it was. I think that was completely out of order. That has nothing to do with reality. And it would be amazing if instead you public service, it could be TV, it could be, I don't know, influencers would start launching other ways of approaching sustainable consumption, so that would be cool. That would be role models playing this out on TV at 8 o'clock on Friday night, instead of always X Factor and the next Danish fashion designer. Because I think that is where we will hit the big groups of people. That's when kids will start, because I mean, that's what I do. I have a 12-year-old. I sit and watch X Factor. But it does have such a big influence on the younger generation. And if Denmark's radio was taking this responsibility and started doing something that would make people want to do it themselves or buy differently, understand, oh, there's a difference between this and that, that would be so inspirational, and that would change consumption. And if we start becoming unaware, instead of unaware consumers being aware of what we're buying, that would make the whole thing change. I know it's only in our part of the world and all that, but I can't see harm. I can't save the whole world. I think we could start with us, because we are very big consumers here. So that would be my direct proposal to a solution.
Sounds like a good idea for some family gather around the, also be a bit curious to see what kind of clothes they have in their cupboard.
Yes, as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rikke. Anders, you're simply going to get the last little bit before we see if there are any questions. So no pressure, Anders, but
right. But then Ulla, I will go back to some of the things you touched on. I've written community with a massive big letters and 2 circles around it and a couple of exclamation marks. And I do not think it's holy at all. I think it actually might be the key to solving what we're standing for. What I think is really important, and working with this for quite a few years, not as many as some of you, is that I think it is the whole complexity of sustainability and the acknowledgement of that that's going to save it, is that everything every one of us are doing are important, and not one method necessarily is more important than the other, but it's the bringing together of all these things into a community. And it sort of got me thinking, Rikke, I love your idea, by the way, about this program. I am so watching it. It's fabulous. You've got to pitch that. But maybe it's also time for us as designers to step back a little bit. If I look at my main sort of group of students now, let's say early 20s, who are brought up with SoMe, they are incredible at creating communities. They are amazing. So maybe we should start teaching a way to design that we maybe just design suggestions, design for process, call it what you want. But maybe we need to step back a bit and give control somewhere else and give it to the community and see what happens. I think we need to engage. And that would be my
Well,
word.
thank you, Anders. That was a very nice way we need to engage. It couldn't end on a better note than that. I personally, I think I could see this could have been, we could have talked for so much longer and really elaborated on how what we view and what we do and so on. But I was just wondering if I don't know if there are any questions at all. It could even be within the panel that you have questions. Could be, yeah, and Louisa.
I have a question for you. I can see that a big part of the group that is here today were also present at the Skandinaviske Designhøjskole in August. And now we are here, it's not even a year ago. So with the Me, You, Us project, would you be able to kind of start helping, supporting something, starting a new kind of network? Because this network is also different from many of the networks I'm sitting in, because we are, I mean, it's a little bit different because we also have the kids and all, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's a question for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, very much. So I mean, I find personally that if the knowledge needs to be shared, and it can be even more, as Marie-Louise as well talked about, very privileged, and that's why we need to. I mean, we have to do something together. And last year, when we went to the Scandinavian Design High School, it's difficult because it's not an English term as such, but we went there and we had a whole day together with workshops, and the huge problem with it was that, and I'm not good at missing out, so I had to miss out some of the workshops, but I coped with that and played a bit adult there, but I just wanted, and I remember when Merete, the head of the school, was like sort of saying thank you for coming, and I just felt like, I didn't do it, but I felt like raising my hand and said, when can we come again, right? Because it was such a great time spent together of possibilities, what could be. And that's also why now when we started, Tia and I started talking about doing this, how could we do it, then we very much also reached out to some of you who were there as well, because you all, as I said about Elme, you know, that there was such a fire there, you know, and Marie-Louise was there, and Anders and Rikke and Elisa and so many others were there, and everybody in the room, they were on fire. And it's just, if this will be a good fire, can spread a bit, and also for a longer, doesn't have to be these short ones, but even short, as you said, Ulla, little things can also work or get much bigger. Yeah. So if something like that could happen, and we have a final conference for the Me, You, Us thing coming up on the 25th of August at Design School Kolding. So perhaps that will be a great place to get us all together for something as well. With of course, there will be possibly even more emphasis on what the digital tools can do there, because that is the main question in the Me, You, Us project. So if people are up for it, we will throw it out there, and it could be something that could move on, even as a passing on the torch to the next one, to say you set something up and we meet for whatever, an hour and a half or something like that. I would definitely be up for that as well. But I can see, Merete, that you have Mark, do you want to say something as well?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Anders for inviting me to these talks. Yes, we said let's meet again, and I also think that we wrote in this nice little book, and I would really love to make a new symposium here at the Højskole. I just need to find some money first. I will work on that part, I can start asking Marie-Anne Louise. But we will work on that part. I think it would be interesting if we can maybe work in a smaller network group, and with the idea of making a conference every other year and put different themes into that symposium. This is actually, let's say, it's an invitation to some of you who would like to be a part of that network group, working with symposiums. That could be at the Højskole. It can be other places depending on the theme that it's for the different symposium, with the headline sustainability in fashion and textile. But it can also, we can also on occasion invite other fagligheder into the network and make other symposium, because as I heard you say, co-work with other are also important in the fashion and textile industry. And I also think that we could put much more, we could discuss the responsibility the education system has from the very beginning of folkeskolen into they start at the university. How can we do that? Because we cannot teach them everything at each level. We have to think of where are they in their life, what do they know, and pass it on to the next level and to the next level. I think that way we will have very students and people from the textile industry knowing a lot about sustainability, if we just manage to give them knowledge at each step in the education system.
Yeah, also so it becomes contextual, the understanding from the life they're living as well and where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you, I would very much like to start a network where working with symposiums. So if you want to be a part of that network, send me an email and I will set up a meeting, and we will start finding money for the next symposium.
Oh, that sounds great. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Merete. So yeah, since I mean we have I mean the only question was yeah, Anna-Louise.
Yes, sorry, now time is up and
yeah,
I'm on fire. But the network could be about an ecosystem of education, like covering lifelong learning or something like that. I don't think we have a community about that yet. And then, of course, within fashion and textiles, I mean, that could be something we could meet about, which would not compete with all the other networks we have. So just an idea. I'll write to you, Merete.
It sounds like a very good title, lifelong learning. In fact, yeah, sounds really good. Yeah, very good. Okay, well, we could have had coffee now if we'd been together, and we could have talked more over the cake and so on. But for now, I'll say thank you very much for all of you. It's been a great pleasure from word go reaching out to you, and you're all very excited to participate. And yeah, let's do it again. And thank you for being part of this. It's been a great pleasure. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much. See you around. Bye.